So thank you very much for coming. I would say just to start, you can, if you feel like you want to ask a question, just go ahead and we can, you can interrupt me. It's fine. So just to make it more interactive. But yeah, today I would like to talk about this piece that I wrote that it was premiered yesterday, Jeux Invisibles. It's a piece that tries to bridge the gaps between electronics and acoustic writing and tries to make the orchestra sound more digital and electronic sound more acoustic. And this is a concern that I have been having in my music for the past years. And I've developed this approach to writing acoustic music in already thinking about how the electronics are going to be sounding, how they're going to be balanced. And so I'm very preoccupied with this, and I'm going to be talking about today about this aspect of my music specifically. So I'm going to present Degrees of Presence, which is the piece for orchestra that won Elan last year, the Prix Elan last year. So also Supratems Amalgamat, a little song cycle for ensemble and electronics. Super Calculated Will also for chamber music and electronics, and Jeux Invisibles. So my background, I'm a composer from Barcelona. I studied in the Royal Academy of Music in London. So I have a very classical training. And I studied with Helen Grime, who writes for orchestra, very, very great composer from London, from Scotland. And Ruben Zascanar, who is from Canary Islands, Spanish composer, and he writes for electronics a lot. So I have this already this kind of orchestra electronics teaching in London. And then I graduated in 2022, and then I spent some time in Barcelona doing some more underground projects with dance. I also work with film, very underground film people. And then I kept composing, and I started to compose with electronics after I graduated. So I started to work with musicians there, just recording on my own, with my own microphones, everything doing myself. And I think that's also how you learn sometimes, just by not having any support at all and being by yourself and doing everything yourself. That's the way you learn. And making this kind of horrible mistake. I mean, there's always mistakes, but particularly at the beginning, it's like, it's horrible. Yeah, and then I got this Prix Elan opportunity thanks to this work that I do with electronics. And last year we premiered this piece. Also, I did some jazz. I did classical piano. I'm a pianist. So, anyways, this is my background. Now, presence, right? We have the first concept that I kind of imagine. I read this book from a German editorial. I can give it to you later. I didn't put it, but it's a very nice book that talks about room acoustics. And I was fascinated by this. It talked about how instruments, they diffuse different frequencies in different directions. So, for instance, an oboe has certain frequency bands diffused in a different direction. There's some that go into the back, into the front. It's more open, more close. And this is really what makes the instrument sound. There's also then the room. Of course, then you have instruments that project towards the back and instruments that project towards the front. So trombones project very, very much towards the front. French horn has the bell pointed towards the back, so you hear it through the room, not through the sound itself, but through the reverberation. So that was already like something that I was thinking about a lot. This kind of interplay between front and back, between reverberation and direct sound. And in this piece, I basically took that very literally. I coined direct sounds, indirect sounds, and then I combined that with proximity and distance. So dynamics, essentially. Dynamics and directionality. And from then I arrived at different parameters, and each movement that I created is an exploration of a different parameter in a very, very poetic way. So for instance, the first movement, it's intimate, and the idea is that the sounds are direct. So you have clarinet sound, which is very, very, in a way, direct, but it's also very quiet, and you can control really the dynamics. It's very controlled. For instance, the second movement, it finishes with a trombone, very forte. So it's very direct and very loud. The third movement, for instance, is it's orchestrated with string harmonics. All the violins playing the same note, so it's very diffuse. So it sounds reverberated. So it's not direct. It's actually the opposite, and it's very quiet. So all of this interplay actually created in a way the dramaturgy of the piece. For me. And this is it. Also, like the structure, it in a way happened to work. It was not intended like this, but the piece starts from very soft and it ends very, very loud. And that's something that in this particular piece, it actually worked very well. But I was not expecting it. In fact, in the rehearsals, we changed the order of the movements, and we put the last movement at the beginning and the first at last. And then we were like, maybe this doesn't work so much, because it's better if the piece goes in crescendo. So in fact, we finished keeping the piece as it was, and we start very soft, and then each movement gets louder and louder until the end, where it kind of explodes. And in a way, the acoustic, you cannot fit more acoustic into the room. It's like the room is like already so filled, you cannot pass the walls of the room. I really like this idea of the orchestra really filling the space, and the electronics in a way can even help put more acoustic into the room. So you feel like you're pushing the walls of the room almost. I love this idea of pushing the walls of the room. In a way, it's like the limits. You're pushing the limits of acoustic space. So I can maybe play a bit of this. This is the end of the fourth movement, but if you look at the beginning of the piece, that's the beginning of the piece. So you can hear this, in a way, it's almost like something that you play, bim, bam, and then something that comes and goes back. It's almost like feedback. It's not played, it's just a resonance. I love modifying resonance in this kind of way, where you're not playing them, they just simply appear and disappear, and it's a game of volume. So by orchestrating this with clarinets have only odd harmonics, so they don't have all the harmonics of most of the instruments. They only have certain harmonics, and they sound very sine wave, almost like sine waves, very pure sound. And just by modifying the dynamics of the clarinet, in a way, you're getting this kind of sense of something electronic already. And if you look at the last movement, for instance. So this is what I mean by breaking the acoustic. It's not that it's just very loud at the end, which it is, but in a way you're adding loudness to loudness. So you already have a texture where you have the French horns here at FFF, you have all the winds as FFF, and even all the brass as FFF, all the strings divided very high, playing very loud. Percussion, it's a tam-tam, so it adds. It's a tam-tam that you're not dampening, so it adds more resonance, and very low resonance, very nasty. And then the last chord, after the last chord, you add a slide whistle, very loud, very high. So it's almost like you think that it cannot get louder, but you're adding loudness to loudness. This kind of adding loudness to something already loud, it's very, very theatrical, I find. So, yeah. So, little note about harmony, because maybe that's something that might be of interest to some of you. But I like tonal harmony. I use tonal harmony. I also like spectral harmony. I use microtones. I use different kinds of spectral harmony. Since a long time ago, I started to use harmony when I was spectral harmony when I was like 15. I downloaded Open Music by IRCAM, and I started to calculate harmonic series. So this program, you can from a fundamental note, you can calculate a harmonic series that is multiples of fundamental by multiplying the base frequency by 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And now there is a Bach. I don't know if you know this. This program is an extension for Max, and it's very similar to Open Music, and it's very streamlined for composing and for calculating harmonies, for this kind of things. And what I use a lot, in particular in this piece, and now I'm using a lot, is expanded spectral chords. So there is this patch in Max. It's a patch for calculating expanded harmonic series. You can, instead of multiplying by 1, you can multiply by any other number, and you can get chords which are either expanded or contracted. And so you get something that sounds that has a lot of resonance, something that sounds very harmonic, but it sounds slightly detuned in a way. And then what I do, I also select each note. So I build chords from each of these harmonics. I reject many harmonics, and I just go by ear, and I find what sounds good and what doesn't sound good. And that's how I build microtonal harmonies. I don't even I don't have a system. I just basically calculate these expansions, contractions, and then I do that. Actually, let me find it because let me find it. Whoops. So this is the patch. Actually, no, sorry, that's the one that we do with you. This is the patch. So this is the harmonic bass frequency, and then I have many presets that I save, and these are the harmonies. So you can, and the nice thing about this also, this system, you can calculate negative harmonics. So you can have subharmonic series, and they sound very different, in fact. I'm trying to find something that sounds almost tonal, actually. So I'm always trying to find something tonal. And minor chords also. So something that is very hard to find in harmonic series because it's essentially like major chords with seventh and augmented fourth. So minor chords, actually, you can only find in subharmonic series. Because subharmonic series are intervallic inversion of harmonic series. And when you invert, think of a major chord. When you invert a major chord, take a F major, for instance, and you invert it, you get if you invert it from F, from the bass note, you get B flat minor, right? You would have to take the F, Fa La Do, Fa Re bemol, Si bemol. So essentially, when you do that with a harmonic series, you also get that. So from a harmonic series to actually get a minor chord, it's very hard. So what you need to do, you need to put a stretch factor here. You need to stretch it. And then you need to select some harmonics in order for that to find these kind of minor chords. And they're not perfect minor chords, by the way. They are very microtonal. And they're very jazzy chords, actually, because I have jazz background, so I love jazz. So that's a little note about harmony. Now, autotune and melodic alteration. Maybe if you were yesterday at the concert, you might have heard that there is some melodic things happening in the oboe part, particularly in the oboe part. And that is autotune. I call it autotune because that's the popular name for it. So I'm hinting at pop music in a way when I'm talking about autotune. But in academic terms, we could call it pitch shifting. We could call it, there's many names for it, right? But autotune, yeah, it's this pitch correction technique, usually used in real time, but you can also do it offline. And it's a creative tool for creating melodies from things that don't have melodies. So, for instance, if you're speaking in spoken voice, you can also put melodies in spoken voice, which is fascinating because then, I mean, in this case, now I'm working on an opera, for instance, and I'm thinking of having places where it's just theater. It's not opera, it's theater. But with autotune, you can create opera out of theater. It's almost like the ancient Greece that the choir would come in and that would be in a way opera, but it would be theater. This kind of game with melody, it's something very fascinating. And so anyways, you can create digital lines, expressive lines. And also you can create lines that have a lot of glissando. So yesterday there was a lot of glissando, probably you heard. Even in the melodies also. So in the melodies, usually oboe, you cannot do more than half a semitone glissando. It's impossible. I mean, it's impossible. It's very hard. In autotune, you can do anything. So we were basically creating melodies with a lot of glissandos, and glissandos, very fast glissandos in the low range and the high range. And that's basically because of this technique. Now, autotune in real time, yes, I have used that too in Supertemps Amalgamat. So this piece we created in Atlanta, in Georgia, United States. recently with this ensemble band frequency. They're very good. And it's based on my own poetry. It's quite abstract poetry in Catalan. And it talks about time. So each movement is a different temporality. It explores a different temporality of everyday life. And you have very fast movement, and you have a very reflective movement. There's a bit of everything. And it's also the first piece where I use this kind of technique, auto-tune in real time for soprano, and also pre-recorded electronics that sound like live electronics. So another thing that I love is to create electronics which are confused with acoustic sounds and that sound almost like real time, but they're pre-recorded. So this is the auto-tune part of the piece. There's many parts of it. It's quite varied. There's also the pop influence for sure.
Quick question: is the title Catalan?
It's recording.
Yeah, sure. Is the title in Catalan language?
The title, yes.
Okay. Just curiosity.
No. Yeah, so oral deepfakes. I kind of invented this term just to talk about the way I use sampling, the way I use recreation of instrument sounds. And the idea is to to prolong sounds in time after they have been played by the instrument. And to really then allow us to do processing in these extended sounds. So it's the best way to do some things like, for instance, this clarinet that you heard, that it plays, and then it prolongs, and then you can maybe do some gating, for instance, something like that, right? That would be an extended sound. I call it the oral deepfake, and it's just a very good way to do processing in top of a sound without doing the processing in real time. So it's much safer, but also there are some processes that you cannot do in real time. So for instance, autotune. In this piece you heard there is some autotune that it is in real time, like when the singer is singing the melodic line, that's in real time. But for instance, when there is the and there's this like line that goes up and very, very high, that is not in real time, because it would be impossible. You would hear the soprano singing and then you would hear the autotune, but you would hear both. And I like just hearing one melody. I don't like hearing both. So there are certain things that if you use these extended sounds, then you can extend the sound and then do the processing, and the processing will not be layered with the original sound in real time. You will have either the tape or you will have the real-time sound. It's a way to do fake live electronics in very simple terms. It's fake live real-time electronics, but you need to write the piece thinking about that, really, because every time that the instrument is playing and you want it to extend it, then you need to think about how it will enter. You need to fade it in so you don't hear the difference. You need to think about many things. So for instance, in Super Temps Amalgamat, I will show you the score. Version 3. But the notation is, everything is notated. I love calculated things. It's called calculated. So not that one, sorry. The other one is called calculated, but this one, it's also about this concept of having everything calculated and written down. And you can see with this Q size that each note is notated. So for instance, here the clarinet is playing this F sharp, and this is the duration of the electronic extension. And this is the effect of the electronics. You have this fade in, fade out. And then what I do also, because I love so much these theatricals of extending sounds, that I tell the player, after playing this note, keep it in the mouth. So do not remove the instrument from the mouth. I want the electronics to seem as they are coming from the mouth, as if they were played. And I do that constantly, in fact, in this piece. For instance, here, here, here. It's all over. It's not a easy piece because it's all click track. But when you have a click track and you lock it in, it's great. It requires a lot of attentive listening also, because the speakers are inside of the ensemble, so they hear the electronics, and they're amplified, so they hear themselves also. So that's another thing that we should maybe discuss, because this is an important part, a specialization, and its technical challenges. But I think that's later. Supercalculated wheel, another piece for piano quintet and electronics. And again, similar thing. That was my first piece with this kind of technique, and it's very literal. It's very Lachmannian in a way. It's inspired by my study of Serenade by Lachmann. It's a piano piece, very good piano piece, very long piano piece, yeah, supercalculated wheel. We can maybe play that. I don't know if we have time. We have time?
We have 45 minutes.
45 minutes.
And that would be nice to have time for
yeah.
questions.
Yeah, okay. Let's go to the next. Let's go to the next. So anyways, you can watch that in YouTube in the Score Follower. I don't know if you follow there's the Score Follower channel, and that's you have the score there. So Jeux Invisibles, that is the one that was premiered yesterday. Orchestra piece, electronics, everything. And it's a concerto for oboe and orchestra. Essentially, it's neoclassical in many ways. But it's a mix of neoclassical and electroacoustic. So the research we did in IRCAM during this year with Luca and Dionysios. Luca is the oboist and Dionysios is the rim. And we explored many textures in the oboe. I was very fascinated by this idea of creating glissandos between instruments. And so I'm going to tell you about what we did now. So Jeux Invisibles, these games, they refer to these invisible electronic games. Each movement is very different from each other. It's almost like a complete different technique. And when I talk about visible electronics, I talk about clearly synthetic sounds, synths, drum machines, something that you play, something that you touch, an instrument, an interface. And at the other end, there is invisible electronics, and that would be electronic sound perceived as acoustic. So indistinguishable from live sources. For instance, deepfake sounds, like the ones I described now, where you extend an instrument and then you manipulate it, but you perceive it as acoustic. Now, there are many ways to make it be perceived as acoustic. The first one is it has to have the same spectrum. It has to have the same spectrum, or very similar. The other important point is that it needs to be spatialized at the same position where the instrument is sitting. It's not easy because usually you have a stereo system, so you have two speakers, and it's better to mix in a real room because then you can perceive better the center point and the sides. If you're mixing in headphones, the left and right are very separated, so the center point, you don't hear it so well. But if you have a studio with speakers, you can mix it and you can really place the sounds. And then something else that we encountered, for instance, in Atlanta when we premiered this piece, Superatoms Amalgamat, when doing the mixing process in real time, was that we had to actually also close the width of sounds. So in this case, there was a flute, clarinet, and then the percussion, piano. But flute and clarinet, for instance, they are mono, so they are just one channel, and they're very close. They need to be their width needs to be very close. I mean, they are mono, so they're closed already, and they're placed in a spot. But for instance, the piano is stereo, right? And it's the sampler that we use in the piano. It has the highs here and the lows here, because that's how you play piano. That's how you perceive it. It's a left-right interplay of highs and lows. So because the stereo space is not so wide, we had to close the width of the piano and put it there. The problem that we had is that it was a bit too much open. So you could hear the piano almost like touching the clarinet. And it's important to really close it and put it there. So that's also a part of the job of doing this kind of live preparation, that you need to really be able to place things where they are in this particular approach, because otherwise you lose the sense of the point of this kind of electronic approach, which is really to put it there, put that there, put that, and really extend that here, extend that there. Ideally, this would work very, very well if you had a speaker per each instrument, right? So you would have a microphone, and then you put the speaker in front so you don't get feedback. And then you would just basically have one speaker for the clarinet, one speaker for the flute, maybe two speakers for the piano and the percussion, one speaker for the soprano. But of course, if you're in a budget, and usually in most cases, a stereo system is completely fine, and it's actually very good. Like I like stereo. It doesn't bother me at all. So you can place even the speakers outside. I mean, yesterday we placed them inside, and in fact, I have to say, I would not do that again. I would definitely put them in front, even if it's less realistic. It's much better for balance, because we had many issues, I have to say. So there are a lot of great things that happen, but the most problems we had with the balance. So if you have very loud electronics, first it's hard to hear the strings because they're not amplified. So the orchestra yesterday was not amplified. That's something to point out. So the electronics fight with acoustic sound, right? They're just louder, right? And if you push them back, then you don't hear them. So in this particular case, if I had to do this piece again, I would put the speakers in front so that they do not hear it so much. It's better for them also because it's very loud and they prefer not to get deaf, so it's good. But also because of this balance problem, we can really push it much more if it's in front. And these days, you can pan things as if they were coming from behind the speakers. So we use this program by IRCAM called Panoramics, and this allows us to place sounds anywhere in the stereo space, or in fact, in any speaker configuration, but we were using stereo. So with this program, we could place things anywhere, and we were using that a lot. And that's why I'm just saying that you can put the speakers wherever you want. As long as you pan the sounds right, you don't have any problems, I don't think. So let's talk about this patch and these ideas. So this is the Ableton session that we used. And what I did, I first did an oboe orchestra mock-up. So in Dorico, I used Dorico. I don't know if you know this program, it's very good. And it's a notation program that was created by the people who did Sibelius. And you can put BSTs, you can put plugins inside, and you can create very realistic mockups. I used Node Performer, which is a very good playing engine for samplers. And I used that to basically do the electronics alongside with it. So, ça marche?
The sound of your computer is down.
Ah, yeah. Thank you. So, for instance, in the third movement, which is, I think, the most interesting in terms of electronics, you have... So here you can synchronize all of your tape to something that it's actually going to be played. I have the oboe mockup also here. And what I do, I will create eight samplers. And each sampler is one wind instrument. This is also like a lot of work because it's a lot of polyphony. But each sampler is a wind instrument. You can see here it's spanned from left to right. You have the flute one very left, then they progressively go to the right in the stereo space. And I was using this Falcon BST. It's a very good BST because you can use, it's basically like a sampler, so it's a bit like Contact. I don't know if you use Contact, but it's a bit like Contact. But you can script, you can do everything inside it with a visual interface. So you don't have to, you can script without scripting, essentially. It's a bit like Max. And then you have this very powerful sampler engine here. And then you can put oscillators. And you have two types of oscillators. You have synthesis oscillators, which are, for instance, additive synthesis, analog, stack, wavetable synthesis. But also you have sample synthesis, and you have these IRCAM algorithms, IRCAM granular, IRCAM scrub. IRCAM scrub is very good, but it's very expensive in terms of CPU, so it will slow your computer down. But this IRCAM scrub is great because it allows you to freeze sounds. I love freezing sounds, as I told you. I use these algorithms to look at one frame of sound and then extend it in time. And IRCAM scrub is like a freeze, but you can actually control the position of the freeze. So you can. So what I did, I used the Orchidea samples from IRCAM. There are a bunch of samples that there's many dynamics in them. There's some that are piano, forte, etc. But there's also transitions between piano, forte. So you have crescendos. And what I do, I will put the crescendo here, for instance here. And with this macro that I map here to the scrub position, I will read from this buffer. Let's boost that. So it's a way to, and I mean, this with flute is not so impressive, but if you have a piano note, imagine like a piano note, staccato, you can also do that. And you can really freeze one frame of a staccato note of the piano. And you can really go into the transient and you get all the noise of the transient. The transient is when the noise starts, the note starts, and there's a lot of noise. But you can also go to the decay, and the decay is very harmonic. So you can really start to grab sounds in a way. That's the thing that I love, to grab sounds and then do things. But first you need to grab them, and it's very important to grab them right, because if you grab them wrong, then you get a very noisy signal or something that doesn't resemble the original sound or this kind of thing. So you need to grab them well, and then you can make fun with them. And these glissandos that you heard yesterday, I did with the samples, and then I bounce them to audio to export them. So first step is to do the glissando, to do this kind of automation of the scrubbing, to make it sound alive, to humanize it. The second step is to then do the gating. So gating, it's this interplay between two things. It's a hoketus, right? A hoketus. So once you have something sounding and another, there's two elements that they sound in a way in opposite rhythms. And the nice thing also, because all the winds are coming from the stereo speaker in the back, and then you have the oboe coming from the mono speaker in the front, if you do a hoketus between front and back, then you get a spatial hoketus. So that was also the idea, that you would have the oboe play one note, have the winds play one chord, and then they would interchange between them in a very, very fast way that it's impossible to do with real performers. And how I did it, well, I used this Max for Life device that I created myself, called MIDI gain. I have a lot of Max for Live devices, by the way. They're all online, so you can check them out if you want. And this is a very simple device. It just grabs a MIDI note, and then it applies on-off volume. And you can set the duration of the attack here. You can put 10 milliseconds, you can put 1 millisecond. 0 milliseconds will give you a pop. It will go like pop, pop, and then out. But you can also put it in very gentle attack. And then you can invert it. So if you invert the MIDI note, then you get this interplay between two notes. So for instance here, you have, there is the gates here. And it's grabbing this channel of MIDI notes, very fast MIDI notes. And each MIDI note up here activates one sound, and this silence activates the other because it's inverted. So that's the idea. Then we have some synths also that we did some processing with them just to create space, create depth. Some low end, some techno stuff that it was kind of muted because it was not sounding so good yesterday. Yeah, very compressed. And then to do this stereo to mono transitions in space with the glissando, we used Panolive, which is a Max for Live device for Ableton, which has panoramics inside. This panoramics software from IRCAM, which is used to spatialize. And you can see here, if I let's put it in another window, the viewer. Here you can automate the trajectories. This is your sound source, mono, stereo, right? And this is how you can compress space and expand it. So Oval multiphonic starts here, and then goes here. Into the wind stereo, everyone is panned here, and then it goes into the multiphonic, which is not panned. So the other thing that is important to note is, like, if you want to recreate a multiphonic or a mono sound, do not pan it. Do not pan it. It needs to be mono. Because I wrote this piece for clarinet, Presence 101, 2 years ago. And the idea was to have clarinet multiphonics, and each harmonic of the multiphonic would then circle around the space, and then I was doing these kind of transformations, but with sine waves and space. And I was not, when I started from the multiphonic and then I went into the space, I started from a stereo file. I started from a stereo panning already, and it was not working. It didn't sound real. So if you want something that's mono to sound real, just make it mono. Do not pan the harmonics. So for this case, I did not pan it. I went to full mono here. And we used this algorithm that's called KNN, which it's very smooth, so you do not hear so many abrupt changes. It's a very smooth panning algorithm. And we didn't use any reverb, actually. I don't think we used any reverb. It was important to have a very clear signal, so you could really hear everything in the space, and the space already gives you reverb, so we didn't add any reverb. I mean, we added, but then we removed it. And then here you can see the automation of the panning. Oh, wait, where is it? Activate automation. Here's the automation. So when it's here, yeah, when it's here, it's mono, and then here it's in the stereo. You can automate it from this other device here, which is called Panolive Control. Then what else? Yes, I love. So I'm a bit of a modular synthesis dabbler. And what you can do with modular scenes, you can go into audio rate. Audio rate is basically when you accelerate something very slow, and then you start to accelerate a lot, and then it becomes a tone. It happens in Stockhausen Kontakte, for instance, this famous movement of Kontakte where it goes from a rhythm to a tone. And what we did, we put a looper, and then we accelerated a lot from a sampler, and then we go into audio rate. The nice thing when you're in audio rate, you have a tone, you have a synthesizer. So this is actually not a synthesizer. This is just like a very fast sampler. And then the nice thing about this particular device that it's called drum sampler, it's a new device in Ableton 12, you can actually pitch shift just by sending MIDI. So we pitch shifted and we created some melodies, and also melodies with MP glides. So with a lot of glissandos, essentially. And for instance, also in the cadence, there's a lot of glissandos. So we just So this is the autotune MIDI channel. Here are the autotune pitch shifting melodies. And it's worth noting that if you just put MIDI notes, it's going to sound not ideal. It's nice if you can put some glissandos, some transitions. That's really what it makes it special. And there is this new glissando MIDI transformation tool in Ableton 12.1 that you can select the nodes and then you can create glissandos between them, like so. So we created these glissandos, and then we send this MIDI to AutoShift, again another Max for Live. No, it's not on Max for Live. It's just a device new in 12.1 that it's basically like an autotune device, and you grab the MIDI from the autotune channel, and then you just pitch shift, and you can also change formats. You can do many games here, many. You can play around a lot, and also nice to have a slow attack because otherwise it gets a bit nasty. And that's the bulk of it. There's maybe a bit more things. Yeah, there's many more things actually. But these are the nice things about it, really. The things that really you could hear very well in the movement, in the score. There, also in the first movement, something that I attempted to do. I'm not sure if it was the most clear thing in the electronics, but something that I was fascinated by was to grab sounds and do gatings, but individual. So each instrument has a different gate. And there's 8 gates.
Sorry.
Yes.
Would you explain again in detail what a gate is exactly?
Right. So a gate, I would say, it's a change of volume. What I call a gate, I guess there is not a correct terminology, but what I call a gate is when you have a MIDI note and you push a sound in and out. So you get the sound in or you get the sound out. Yeah, it's basically that.
So what sound do you push in or out? The acoustic one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like the speakers give a MIDI sound,
Yeah.
And there is an acoustic sound that starts piano, for example, and goes in
Yeah. So
and then goes out by being even louder than the speaker, or how?
So you have these, I use these audio stems that I bounce from Dorico. And it comes from a very nice library by Berlin Woodwinds. Very, very expensive library, unfortunately. So here, this is the audio, in fact. This is the audio, in fact. And in the score, you can see in the score, where is the score? You have the score. I guess you have the score, but in the score you can see in the electronic notation, there is three staves. There's one that is wind samplers, which are these guys. These tracks are wind samplers, right? They're all notated. And then there's the gate, and the gate is just a bunch of MIDI notes that I'm sending to these devices to control gain. So, okay, so let's talk about gates. So you have essentially samplers. They play all the time, like continuously, right? They play continuously, like this. If you mute this, oh wait, it's actually that one. So they play continuously, right? It's basically playing the same thing as the winds. But what if we put some notes here, some MIDI notes? Okay, we have this rhythm, very electronic rhythm because it's very fast. Then we could control the volume of all these samplers, right? And what I do, I put this utility where it's basically to control the gain. It's just volume automation. I could do this by hand, but of course it's much more slow. So what I do, I control this volume with MIDI. And in MIDI, Unison Gate, I use this envelope MIDI, and I basically create an envelope here. Attack, decay, sustain, release. Right? It's a 4-stage envelope, typical of electronic music. And then I map that envelope into the gain. And then I can create this almost pizzicati sound. It starts like and then I change. What I do, I automate the parameters. I automate, for instance, the attack. I would start from a very long attack when the winds are playing fa fa fa. And then I go into a short attack. Just by automating this parameter here, I mean, it's a very simple automation in a way, but it changes a lot. And then you map that envelope into here. You see that? It's just a volume. It's playing with the volume. This I wouldn't call gating, actually. I would call volume automation, maybe. There are other parts where I would call it gating, where the MIDI note is just on, off, on, off, on, off. To me, that's gating, when it's on, off. Yeah.
So it's a phenomenon that only happens inside the electronics. It's not related to the interplay of electronics and orchestra, right?
It's not.
Okay.
That's not.
This is what I wanted to understand.
Yes, you can, I guess, I also had the idea of maybe creating this interplay with real orchestra, maybe, for instance, doing this, but instead of doing it with between the oboe and the frozen sound, you have a frozen sound, and then every time the double basses do a pizzicato, you duck. But you write everything beforehand. That's also a nice possibility, and it's much more interactive in a way. But I didn't do that. But that would be nice also to do. because then you have something frozen in the electronics and then something live that's the electronics, and that would be also very nice to attempt.
I don't want to slow you down too much, but just to understand it completely, how is the process of creating a passage like the one you just showed? So since you have an accelerando and rallentando of this on-off volume or high-down, low, up-down volume, how does this work technically to produce that you create this envelope shape of automation and repeat it manually, like Control-C, Control-V, maybe reducing it every time? Or is there even a way to automate the pace of accelerando and rallentando?
There might be a way, yeah.
Okay, but you do it manually.
I do.
Okay.
I do. And you can do, if you want the trick, I mean, there's many ways to, these days you can do it in many ways. But I would create a MIDI clip, I would put some notes, and then you can, there is this time warp here, and you can warp things like that. Yeah. The other way is to just create a note, pass it through an arpeggiator in the arpeggiator MIDI device. And then this is very nice, in fact, because you have this you can repeat notes, MIDI notes, at millisecond, and then you can go into audio rate here, 10 millisecond, and that will give you a G2 or something like that, which is already a note. So if you go like crazy, you can go like ta 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 ta, and you can basically repeat anything, really. I mean, you can repeat a sampler, but you also can repeat a gate. So you can do gates that go into audio rate, that is that they already synthesize something from just doing volume automation. And I didn't explore that, but I wish I discovered this before. Yeah, but I think this came in the latest version, so yeah, it was not even there.
So you could get a similar or the same effect by manually playing with the rate and automating that. Okay.
Exactly, yeah, with the rate. Maybe it would not be such a perfect curve as if you do it like with the audio, with the warp tool. But yeah, you could make other things. You could also synchronize the rate, so you could synchronize it perfectly with the tempo. And you can also arpeggiate, really. So you can. The other thing that I was trying very hard, but I didn't manage, was to also arpeggiate the. I wanted to desynchronize the gates because it sounded very blocky. Tack, tack, tack. Everyone was playing the same. So I attempted, but I didn't really quite succeed to make individual gates that would dephase. And I was using this multiple delay that you basically give, you map the input here. So you go from envelope MIDI to, you map it here in the input. And then this multiplies it. And then you can map here each of these to a different output. But you can also delay it by a certain amount. So essentially you get the same envelope MIDI, but you have it go into different directions, but later each time. So you can also go like, but again, it was not really working in terms of the sound. I didn't really get I think it needs to be, this delay, it needs to be scaled differently. It needs to be more exponential in order to be more of an arpeggio. But yeah. The thing that I did do with this MIDI that was polyphonic, and this was polyphonic, and you can probably hear it in the first movement, in fact. So this is a polyphonic case where each instrument has their own gate, and what I do, I use this rhythm, taka 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 tak tak taka tak tak. It's a Michael Jackson song. Anyways, and I use this rhythm, and I have loads of notes. Right? They all have different amplitude. I mean, these are the velocities, amplitudes, whatever you want to call it, volumes. So they all have different volumes, and then they go into this total random. And this total random makes on-off for each of these 8 MIDI envelopes here. And then I map everything to these 4 macros, so attack, decay, sustain, release, again, the same thing. And then each of these guys, they are each mapped to a gain in a different instrument. And really the most difficult thing is to have this effect, but also to hear the sound of the instrument. Because when you do the gating, then it starts to become like a synthesizer. It starts to sound like a synthesizer, actually, because you're making envelopes that are synthesizer envelopes. So you lose really the sound of the sampler. And what you need to do parallel mixing. So you need to put the gate here. I mean, you don't have to, but I guess that's how he did it. You put the gate, you do the volume automation, this random volume automation here, and next to it you put a through. So this is not touched. It's just the no processing, but just slightly lower. It's minus 20 dB. So it's just to hear the sampler a bit more, because otherwise it's just like tick, 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 and you do not hear the flute. You need to be able to hear some flute. And so that was very hard to do, because when you do that, then you lose the levels. You need to recalibrate all the levels. That was crazy. That was a crazy thing to do. And then also, I didn't manage to map this correctly, so it would be plus 30 dB. So it was clipping all the time, so I had to trim it down by 30 dB. So I don't know how to map it. In fact, it's a very strange device. So essentially, in Ableton 11, up until 11 to 12, you could only remote map. So when you map, it's done. You cannot touch that knob. Now you can, in Ableton 12, you can modulate it. So when you modulate a parameter, like here, you can see that it's changing the level, but you can also touch it and automate it. So you can do both things. So it's very nice, because you can automate this parameter, you can make it move, but you can also grab it and move it. Oh, okay. Questions?
Questions?
I would have another one if nobody. Okay. Yeah, picking up on what you said now about the preserving the sound of instruments. I wanted to ask. So, what work did you do to make the electronic sound merge as much as possible with the acoustic sound of the orchestra? So you mentioned you used an expensive library of sounds of this Berlin orchestra. Is this usually enough to, proper diffusion to project a good library of sounds? Does it usually merge already acceptably with an acoustic orchestra, or is there a particular work or a couple tricks at least, or what was your work? What was the process?
I mean, if there's something that I would probably improve on the electronics, would be that, because at the end of the day, the spatial configuration was not like we planned. I mean, it's really dependent on the venue. So it's when you have a tape like this that everything is bounced, you cannot change the stereo positions, and they were not sitting in stereo, they were sitting like in 2 rows, the woodwinds. So that was the first thing that was, I mean, you cannot plan that. So it doesn't matter at the end of the day, it's one of those things, right? But to make it realistic, I would say, and this is something that, again, I didn't do in this case because I did this export from Dorico. So I was running this in Dorico and I exported directly. And you need to make expression maps and many things that I was not so good at. And so basically I used the free library at the end, free orchestra library by Berlin Tools, orchestral tools. And that is just basically one microphone position which has reverb. And it turned out to be not so bad. I'm not disappointed by it. I like it because you need reverb in order to be realistic. If you don't have any reverb, then actually you always have to have reverb in the samples, I would say. And not just like added reverb, but like natural reverb. You need the recorded reverb of the room, of the sample. So we used the samples with reverb, and then what I would do differently, I would use the close miking. So in these libraries of Berlin, you have 2 close mic positions. Apart from the 3 and the more roomy, reverby samples, you have also more dry samples, but not completely. They're drier because they are recorded like very close. So I would probably use that next time. But this was fine for me. Reverb is good in this case because otherwise it sounds very wrong. It sounds very wrong. And panning is, again, it's very hard to predict what the concert situation will be. And in this case, it was not as we did in the tape, but it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Yesterday at Arnau Brichs, the president of the jury told about the future of electronic music, and when I heard your piece, I really thought about that. I think it was a great piece and really innovating, a novel in an advance in electronic music. I would have many questions.
Thank you very much.
So you already told about us. So, but I'm not sure I grasp. What did we hear yesterday as regards the electronic part? You have real time and process. You spoke about these two, or it just is ordered by this DAW? I would say, was it just the track we see here that was played, ordered? How is it this real time, and what is processed before?
So no real time, 0. No real time. The commission was a stereo tape. And I already did not do a stereo tape. I did a stereo tape plus a mono. But it was triggered in real time, that's true. It was triggered in real time. We had a click track in the first movement. And then in the rest, there was also a click track, but there were some places to stop. I would probably not use a click track again. It's a very hard thing to do with orchestra because they always play ahead, and so to synchronize it, it's not ideal. It's not like ensemble. Ensemble you can use click track no problem, but orchestra, it's very hard. So yes, there was no real time processing. Everything was done with this system of really writing the score and then basically taking each note and putting it into a sampler and then doing the processing. And hopefully it sounds like real time because it's the same sounds. Really, each note is there. So the mapping, the idea was to have everything there, but it was all pre-recorded.
And as well, how do you maintain the score between the written score, the one, for example, in Dorico, and all this electronic processing? How do you ensure you will be able to reproduce and so on? There are many parameters and so on. Is it
yes,
an homogeneous score? How do you?
This is not the final performing score. The final mix, we bounced all the audio, and we use basically 5 tracks. So the performance was used with another session, which is this one. And here you have the 2 mockups, which are not used. And then you have oversampler mono, which is the oversampler. Wind stereo, which is wind sampler. Some synthesizers, which are also stereo. And then you have the low end, again, different channel, just to mix it differently. Click track triggers. And then you have the panoramics stereo mono, which you need to export separately. Because, and then again, here you can see the transitions, for instance, right? Here. Whoops. I need to... here it fades out. This is coming from panoramics output. It fades out, and then this fades in. So this is mono, this is stereo, and we basically printed all the audio. So yeah, here you have these 2 channels, and I printed them, and then here I printed that, and makes life simpler. Yeah.
Because Nicola has to close the room, and we have
Okay.
next session after
Sure.
in the afternoon.
Okay.
Many thanks. It was very
Many thanks. Thank you. Thank you.